Shit. What's up? Hey, I was gonna do like a Big Brother style thing, like I'm sitting on the couch talking to you guys, talking about how much of a bitch Lucy is and how much of a cunt, Trevor is. Um, yeah. So here I am. Check out my masks. Oh, I gotta go this way. They're from Papua New Guinea. I displayed them there. They're not usually there. Anyway, I thought I was going to talk tonight about some environmental stuff, like the map of Gyris. You probably already noticed by now that I blink a ton. It's like I always used to think it was allergies, and then I grew to find out it's just like a nervous tick. So I usually like to tell people that, so I feel less weird seeing myself blinking like a fucking maniac. So we're 7 days out. So fucking cool. I'm so anxious and so excited all at the same time. Such a cool community. I get so many cool messages from you guys. So fucking much love. So I wish I was like creative in like drawing. I've always wished this. I can't. I've drawn these maps a few times myself, and I passed them on to some people to help us. My boy Sims started to do some maps, but I've got nothing that I can show you. But I'll try and explain it, and it might create some questions. It'll be really cool once we get to kind of display this map properly. But so Gyris, when you see the map, you'll see that a lot of it is, it shows you the story. There are a few parts that are kind of blocked off, I guess, and you have to use your imagination there. Much like, a little bit like how Lord of the Rings is sort of this world that's kind of surrounded by water, just kind of captured in a space. That's mostly how Gyris has been imagined, with some space for some more things. So starting back, if you look at the preamblic history, the prologue, it talks about the spark of life beginning where Porth now lies. So the blood of the unseen gods fallen from the sky, sparks, a single cell divided, and that is the beginning of life, much like our own world in Gyris. That place where that drop of blood landed is said to be the crucible, the cradle of a civilization. So that place became Porth, the most civilized part of Gyris, and you guys haven't heard me talk about that very much because we're not really exposed too much to Porth. We see it once, just very, just a flash of it in The Sound of Trees Standing. It is the home of the Darwar, and the story of Gyris, or the prehistory of Gyris, talks about these peoples. So from the single cell, grew these organisms, continued evolution, much like our own on Earth, into plants and animalia, animals. Very much the same sort of situation in Gyris. And when what we would consider something humanoid, these beings started to exist, not long after, they looked off into the distance where they could see what would become Aluigwe. Aluigwe was this huge mountain, and it became like a pilgrimage. So they would go to Aluigwe and worship Aluigwe because it's this huge mountain that grew up to the heavens. That's kind of how it translates. Now, over time and evolution of kind of humanity, as you grow, you have different temperaments, different needs and wants, and some of that tribe, they found things below the earth, riches that they felt enriched their life. So Then began an attention. My dog is... Who are you talking to? Them? These guys? What are they? Really? Them? Tell me more. Yeah. Oh. Why'd you do it? You know? Over there. Come on. Is it the mask? It's just me. It's not. I'm putting it down. You made me lose my spot, man. I'll put this one down. Alright, it's down. Are we good? Look, just a mask. Dude, this dog... Sorry, I'm going to get sidetracked here. This dog... I think I'm freaking out that he sees ghosts or something. I'm not afraid of ghosts. I don't really believe in ghosts. But he comes in at night, because it's been raining, and he just sits and he stares down the hallway, and he just starts to growl like that, as if there's something up there. And then I start to think, is this a situation where there's people living in my roof? You know, you hear those stories? Some fucking weirdos come in and like just start living in your roof and perving on you. That sounds like something Luke from the Discord would do, by the way. I know you, buddy. Anyway, where were we? Genesis story. Moving on. So, you know, you start to see these natural divisions in what was a small group, and people naturally start to divide themselves. And this tension between people who wanted to keep Aluigwe as a spiritual home, and those who wanted to, I guess, pillage what existed underneath, the richness that existed underneath Aluigwe, left those who wanted to dig the riches, I guess, to venture out on their own. So they ventured southeast for quite some distance, until they found another great mass of mountains, and Makadimaru, which is another Aluigwe style huge mountain that reached up to the heavens. So this was kind of their signal. You know, they felt like this was their chance to do what they wanted with this step to the heavens. They would become the Mingieri, and the Mingieri, you know, over time would spend more and more time underground. I can't tell you too much about the evolution of the Mingieri, because I'll spoil some things, but needless to say, they become more and more obsessed with the things underneath the ground, and the world for them very much becomes underground. Now, the ones that would become the Bura from this original, I guess, genus or you know, evolutionary path, were the ones within those communities that sought nature and solitude and adventure, and didn't care too much for this, for these riches, or for this rapid need to grow, you know, technify the world. And they would move more and more remote, away from the more rapid civilizing beings of Gyris, and they would find themselves in the pockets of Gyris that were most remote. Now, as you will hear in The Sound of Tree Standing, they actually they were originally where those Mingieri held dominion, and somewhere pre-Gyris, Sound of Tree Standing, they moved on because of conflict. They found their true home in what is called the Borough Lands. The Borough Lands are based on a few places in the world. So it's based on the highlands of Papua New Guinea. It's a really interesting place, like really interesting kind of geography. You know, Papua New Guinea's thought of as like this island, uh, but it's really quite massive. In the same sort of elevation across the border in another part of like Grand Papua, in West Papua, there used to be a snow resort. That's how high it gets. So the highlands are actually somewhere between like alpine and tropical. It's weird. Like you can still get coconuts, but you can go up the road and you can climb some of the biggest mountains in the world. So, well, 4,500 meters, which is quite big for our part of the world. It's a really interesting dynamic. So it's the Borough Lands, though, they have this like step up. So you can imagine Porth and Makadumadu, Morindu's underground, but there's a sea level, and then the Bura Lands are actually stepped way up, 1 kilometer elevation high, 1.5 to a plateau, and on that plateau again, shitloads of mountains. Those mountains, however, they don't act, or the ecosystem doesn't act in the same way as what we have in Earth, where you have like really dense tropical sort of jungle. That's what they have in the Borough Lands. So they are stepped up in elevation, but it still has this really kind of like dense sort of jungle that you find in a lot of awesome places in Papua New Guinea, specifically for me in Bougainville, the place where we'll support programs with Gyris. So the Borough Lands are fucking sick. I wish I could let you into my mind, and over the years I'll get to. They are. It's an amalgamation of some really cool places. The reason why all that sort of elevation stuff is significant is because the Borough Lands become this place where you have. It's really difficult to get into because you have to climb up to get there. But the Bura, like I was mentioning yesterday, they travel down these massive river systems. So there's these tons of river systems because of how mountainous it is, and how plentiful the rain is in the Bura Lands, that they can find their way down these endless forks of rivers to different parts of the flatlands. But it's really hard to get in, so it's somewhat impenetrable. The main sort of entry point to the Borough Lands is this section of the Great Wall, not like the one in China, but this really sheer rock that's rather difficult to scale, I guess. So the only way kind of up is back up river systems, which, as you can imagine, is quite difficult. Or, as we find out in The Sound of Trees Standing, with assistance from certain creatures. So the Borough Lands is divided up, at least in as much as you'll get to know, into 4 regional areas. There is Sval, Motun, Aku, and Duara. Now, I'm actually changing the name of Sval because it doesn't quite fit with the language. Originally, it was Scandinavian influence because of the certain qualities of it, but that's going to change before launch. I've got a couple of days to really nail that one down. But Sval is the northernmost part of the Borough Lands. Along the top of the map, you kind of have this sort of undiscovered section. There becomes a point where it's far too difficult for anyone to go further north. It's just too hazardous and icy and mountainous. And Sval is the closest in the Borough Lands to that area. It is near its own mountain, big mountain, and then a bunch of other smaller mountains. It is often covered in snow and ice, and it is the place where you find the best burasi, the best makers, the most craftsmen. Then there's Aku. So the Akukani is actually my co-founder's name it's her Bougainvillean name, the Akukani. Her name is Akukani, and I took that as a name of the people, the Akukani, of Aku. Now, Aku uh, is within sight of Kira, another grand mountain of Gyris. There's a theme here of grand mountains. On the other side, south, so they're north. On the other side of Kira is Duara, and Duara is the place that we find a lot of. It is where a ton of the story of the Sound of Trees Standing is set. We only really reference Sval and Aku in the script, and they're of course a big part of the Bura drop, but they become way more significant in film 2 and film 3. Then there's Motun, and Motun is actually named after Motu. Motu is a language, a coastal language that is found in Papua New Guinea. Apparently, Motu is actually spoken quite randomly on a bunch of islands all the way towards Africa. It's like carried through this long sort of migration over tens of thousands of years. That's what I'm told. It's really, really interesting. Some of the language, the Bura language, is kind of taken from the ideas like Adarai Namana. It's that's sort of that like Orapa, Uranai. It takes it from those parts of Motu. So the Motun, they live in Motun, and Motun's a really fucking cool place. I haven't really talked about this much, but I talk about it as being coastal, but it's not actually coastal. It appears very coastal. So there is a section, there's a part of the Borough Lands, within the Borough Lands, that I haven't written the words for it yet, but it's the Kingdom of Wings was its original place. It was called the Kingdom of Wings. It was one of the first things I wrote for my children in the first story, which is now kind of film 2. Kingdom of Wings is the kind of a mecca for the Mara, and their, I won't say queen, but someone really cool that we meet in film 1, and that you really get to know in film 2 and film 3. A very pivotal character, and a bunch of Mara kind of live in this space. So you've got Sval up here. This is a mirror image, but you've got Aku, you've got Duara, and then over here you've got Motun. Now, it's a whole bunch of river systems, and in here is the Kingdom of Wings, and further to the coast you have Motun. Now, Motun is on this massive section that looks like a sea, and coastline, fishing. It's a real kind of coastal vibe. The people nice and sunny there because it's kind of exposed to the edges, not as forest filled, at least on one side as like Aku or Duara is, and not as exposed to the same sorts of elements of Sval. So it looks like they live a coastal life, but actually it's just so immense and massive that actually when you get to the very edge of that waterway, it drops off onto absolute epic waterfall into the sheer cliffs down for a kilometer down into the sea level. Another reason you can't just like take boats around sea level and sneak your way into that section of the Borough Lands. What else can I tell you about the Gyris map? The Morindu. So Morindu is actually named after a street which is near Mount Kira. Mount Kira I mentioned as well. Mount Kira is the um, the place that inspired a bunch of the Borough Lands. The Borough Lands were inspired from Mount Kira, the mountain I grew up under, and those various places in Papua New Guinea. On your way to get up Kira, you walk from my childhood home, and there's a street called Morindu, and Morindu is people will think that it's just like a contrived name taken from there's a Lord of the Rings uh, uh, place name that kind of sounds like that. But it's genuinely Morindu is the street that you go up and you take a little path and you kind of sneak your way up the back of one of these tracks. So Morindu is really cool. So this is like the kind of mecca, the place where the king's like underground palace is. And from that place, it's like this entire underground arterial network stretches under Gyris. Now, it doesn't stretch all the way under Gyris, and there's talks that it might go further than it does, but it's sort of this thing that's grown over so many millennia that there's within the law of the Mingieri and their own evolution, there's stories of, um, uh, passages and whole cities and whole spaces that have been lost to, earthquake and collapse and whole areas that have been closed off. There's sort of passageways that are not supposed to be there, and they do reach quite far into their own borders, and many say beyond. So really cool shit happening underground, and you're exposed again, actually, to quite a bit of Morindu and mostly just Morindu rather than the entire arterial network. But you're exposed to quite a bit in the first film. As I said, Porth, which is the kind of homeland of the Dawa at the time of the film, is the kind of heart of civilization. Picture probably closest would be something like ancient Egypt, with a little more of a feudal feel. So if you look at like the different classes that come as part of Dawa, you notice that there's this real tension that's grown over time. So you have the Garamur, the Jalu, who is a pivotal part of the first film, and the Garamur is like essentially a shaman. They're a holdover from an earlier time. We talked about how the Dawa used to worship Baluigwe, this mountain to the heavens. This is very much the Garamur thing. This kind of primitive connection to the earth, or to Gyris, and the heavens and spirituality that becomes submerged by the New World Order. The emergence of an aristocracy, Kadagaristoi, the aristocracy, landowners, the abuse of power, the growth of power and the collection of it, and the way in which some gain power at the to the negative of others. I'm losing my words here. To the detriment of others is what I was looking for. Then you have the Artulam, and the Artulam is this new power dynamic. People need this sort of this ethic or this religious drive. So you find this emergence in a rapidly modernizing civilization where a new, more civilized religious experience starts to emerge, one that works alongside the Kadagaristoi, the Artulam, and starts to push aside the Garamur, the kind of old ways. The Garamur a Dar but they have an affinity with the Bura. They have an affinity with the Animalia of Gyris. The Animalia, so a bunch of I guess the workers of the Dar they move and work in much of the plains, the farmlands, these types of things that kind of span the distance between a lot of the map, or at least what you'll be exposed to. And further from Porth, past the working lands, the grasslands, grazing lands, there's a ton of wetlands. So all of that water and river systems that are coming from that side of the Borough Lands enter these marshlands. And the marshlands are a place where a ton of ecology exists. This rich ecosystems of animals and plants, because it's very difficult for the beings of Gyris, the humanoid, genuses to kind of live there, whereas animals, much like in our own world again, can exist there. So we see a little bit of this in film 1. It's the setting where Dejalu is called to meet with the different races or the different types of Animalia to help them against the Mingieri. I've just kind of talked about a bunch of different parts of Gyris there. I know it kind of jumped around, but hopefully some of you guys will find that interesting. There's so many cool things that I can't wait to show you and depict. I think we're going to achieve something really beautiful that has so much variety and difference, but feels cohesive and it tells a story that makes sense. So, and the reason why I think we're going to be able to do that is because we got some great artists. Just signed another one yesterday, and hopefully secure a few more. But right now we have, I think, 3 of the finest motion graphic artists in the country. So that's really fucking cool. Anyway, there was one quick question from the floor. I think ATVs asked, he said, if there is evil, is there good? Or maybe it was the other way around. That is the central question probably of Gyris. It is the exploration of that sort of duality, good and evil, and the exploration of it in all of us. I don't want to go into it too much, but yes, there is forces of good and evil, and there's some really I really hope we achieve this in a way that no one has done. I think, a couple of people have said this to me, which is lovely, because without really thinking about it, it is what we wanted to achieve. But we're trying to tell a story that hasn't been told. Fantasy is a regurgitation generally of the same sorts of themes. We've created our own world, and I think that's what the greats did. They created something new. So we get to try and do that as creatives, but we also, even if just in a small way, we get to do it with community, with their thoughts, their ideas, their suggestions. There's going to be some people that get their names in Gyris. I haven't said that yet, but I've put a bunch of my friends in it, and I plan to put special community members in the script, sneak their names in or modify the names a little bit, but a little bit of a tip of the hat to them. That's the story part of it, but the community play a really important part of the creativity of the project that surrounds the story. And I mean, I keep saying this is a crazy time in history where we get to try and do something no one's ever done before. I think it's fucking awesome. We could be a community that that builds a fucking film and gaming franchise. That's mental. You know, just a bunch of people that come together and vibe on some shit and take it out of the hands of you know, massive studios that have amassed money and power over time and don't, you know, deserve to be in business but don't deserve to be making creative decisions. That belongs with creatives and the people that they serve. And that's so fucking crypto, and that's why I love it. So that's it from me. I think that was pretty huge. So anyone who makes it through this, thanks for listening. And any questions you guys have, please throw them at me. I think I did a decent job at uncovering some stuff, but not giving you any proper spoilers. So I've been worried about telling parts of the story quite a bit because of that. But yeah, if you have some deeper questions of the parts of Gyris and you want to know more, then just ask the questions. We just put out like a little post around the chief stuff. So really quickly, how the governance system works in the different genuses, it's different everywhere. So in the DAO will have very much like a class system that is probably closest to capitalism, somewhere between like capitalism and like feudalism. You know, they have a ruling class, whereas the Mingieri have a ruling class, but it is certainly it's very feudal. But the Gyerikin, the royal class, really hold dominion, and the stratification is it's much more pronounced. You know, you've basically got slavery or indentured slavery, servitude, in that system, where most of the population is kind of kept in really bad conditions. Whereas the Dawa have kind of cleverly done it. They're analogous to our own world, probably more so, where people just are servants without realizing. The Bura, however, they're very democratic. They do have a leadership sort of council in each area, and those leadership councils are made up of one Buraman and one Burameri from each class, making 8 on the council of each, of each 4. So, that's 32, is it? Yeah. But then there's a 9th in each section. So we'll have, in the drop, we'll have 4 from each, because we don't have the Burameri there. We will, though, one day. And then you have the 9th, which is the Master Chief. The Master Chief doesn't vote in decisions. They don't have a vote, but they will vote if they need to. So this is to try and keep things as open and unbiased as possible. So if there's a decision to be made, the idea is that everyone will be doing what they think is the best for their community, and they acknowledge that there is power in those that have been acknowledged as someone of leadership, and that their decision, if given in that space, could sway others. So they keep their decision until the end if they need to. That's sort of the system of governance that you see in the Borough Lands. I think it's really cool. Anyway, hey, love you guys. That was funny with my dog, right? Hey, you want to come say hello? Sleeping. Doesn't want. Maybe I should attack him with this guy. See you guys. Urena. Urenai.